might know me as Cucciarepa. Today I'm going to show you how to make two types of smashed sides, mashed sides that you might serve at a feast or a Thanksgiving or something like that. A cauliflower side and a mashed sweet potato side. So before you start, I want to go over what tools you're going to need. Yesterday I used coconut milk in my trial run and it was great. I wanted to try something today, so if you're watching this now and you're making the sweet potato side, I want you to try to put your coconut milk in the fridge. So what we're going to do is we're going to isolate the coconut water from the coconut cream, and that's just going to make your side creamier without having to add too much liquid to make it liquidy. Actually, I wanted to do that for the cauliflower. If you also happen to be watching this later, you can get coconut cream in a can, and that will help cream up your cauliflower mash or your sweet potato mash without making it more watery. So I wanted to tell you guys that right now. So if you want to try that, put your coconut milk in the fridge right now. And then we're going to try and see if we can separate it out and make it creamier. The other thing you want to do before we start the official hour-long cook-along is wash your sweet potatoes. I use a hard brush that's only for washing vegetables. It's a hard bristle brush. So do that before you start. I'm going to be using 2 pots to boil water. One is going to be like a regular pot. You're going to see it. It's going to look normal. The other one is an Instant Pot. That's just because I have a tiny kitchen. I have a micro kitchen, and I don't have another induction stovetop, and I'm running 2 things at the same time, and I'm trying to make them in an hour or less. I'm trying to make 2 sides in an hour or less. So you're going to see my Instant Pot. You don't need an Instant Pot for this recipe. I'm simply using my Instant Pot to boil water. This is an example of using the gadgets that I have to their max capacity. So an Instant Pot can do a ton of different things. One of them is boil water. So you don't need another gadget to boil water. So go ahead and on your stovetop, if you're making one side, I want you to start boiling 1 pot of water. Don't worry how much water is in there. We'll talk about it when we get started. You're making both sides. I want you to start boiling 2 pots of water. Once we're done boiling everything, I want to show you the tools that I may or may not be using. I have a ton of tools. You don't need a ton of tools to be a good cook. So I'm just going to show you options, okay? So the first thing we have to talk about is we're going to steam both the cauliflower and the sweet potatoes. So you might have a strainer that looks like this. It's a bowl. You just pour everything through it and you strain your vegetables. If you don't have that, I also have this. This strains, what's it called, noodles. You have a noodle strainer. It just goes on the edge of the bowl like this and keeps the food in there but lets the water out. A noodle strainer will also work. I know a lot of people eat noodles. Or, just pour it out. Don't use your hands, but pour it out little by little. You don't need a special gadget to strain stuff. I will also be using in my Instant Pot, this is like special for the Instant Pot, but you might have one of these strainer baskets to put my sweet potatoes in. That way I can just take them out really easily and they'll drain just like that. So that should be good in terms of draining water from vegetables. Now in terms of mashing vegetables, you can always use a fork. This works perfectly. Some people have a potato masher. If you have a potato masher, you can use that. Some people have an immersion blender. This is mine. I just got a new one, but I had for 2.5, maybe 3 years, I had just a regular $20 immersion blender. They work really well. Don't let anyone tell you that you need a fancy immersion blender because you don't. I'm just trying to consolidate tools, so I bought immersion blender with a really good motor so that in the future I could use this also for other gadgets and I would just have one motor and I could consolidate gadgets. So that's why I have like a fancier one, but you don't need a fancy immersion blender. If you don't have a fancy immersion blender, you might have a regular blender. Regular blender works really well. I will show you how to use that. I will tell you how to use that as we're going if you have a regular blender. If you don't have a regular blender and you have a food processor, that will also work. So the goal is to be really flexible and use what you have. Don't feel like you need special gadgets to be a good cook, because you don't. You just need the love in your heart and creativity, which we're all born with, because that's a quality of being human. So that's all you need. I also have a garlic squisher. You don't need this. You can squish garlic with a knife. You do need a sharp knife. Mine is getting a little dull, so we might have to do a knife class soon. That's it. That should be all the gadgets that you need. And a bowl. I have a glass bowl that I'm using so you can see what I'm doing. You don't need a glass bowl. You can use a metal bowl. You can use a ceramic bowl. Just one that's going to be big enough to put all your veggies in. So with that said, I'm going to go wash my potatoes, and we're going to get started with the live cook-along in an hour or less. The reason that I was a little nervous is because a lot of this cook-along is actually just waiting on your veggies to be soft and boil. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys got some stuff out of the way before we started. And we're going to go get started. We're going to go ahead and get started. First thing we're going to do is, if you already have your cauliflower florets cut, I want you to put them in boiling water. I want you to go ahead and put them to boil. So back here, I've got my boiling set up. So I told you guys that we would talk about how much water is necessary to boil. These cauliflower are going to soak up a lot of the water, so you just want to put enough water to cover like the very bottom layer of the cauliflower. I don't have them sitting on anything, they're just in there in the boiling water. I'm also going to put a lid on it. Now, on my recipe list, I told you half a pound is okay. It's okay, it's not going to make a lot of servings, so you might start with half a pound and see how many servings you get out of that, and then ramp it up as you feel confident that you're able to make this. I just put 2 pounds of cauliflower florets in that boiling water, and I put the lid on. Oh, I wanted to tell you about the garlic. Darn it. Okay, so I have some garlic cloves, and if you like your garlic, you might put it in raw at the end of your recipe. If you like the taste of garlic but not too much, you might pop them in there while the cauliflower itself is steaming, and you'll get, a nice soft garlicky taste. It won't be as strong because you'll also have steam to the garlic. If you don't have the florets already in a bag, I'm going to show you how to cut them in a minute, but we're going to go ahead and get started cutting the sweet potatoes because they're going to take a little longer to boil. So the recipe asks for large sweet potatoes, and when you're cooking something, you want, like a sweet potato this big is going to take a long time to cook if you just leave it alone. So by leaving it alone, I mean if you leave it in a whole form. So what I'm doing is I'm simply cutting it into fourths. Well, eighths, really, I guess. So I'm cutting it in half, and then I'm cutting each of those halves into 4 pieces. So it's going to look like this. And that's just going to make it so they cook a little bit faster because they're smaller pieces to cook. So we're going to go ahead and finish cutting up the other 2 sweet potatoes so that we can get that one going. I'm not peeling them. As you might have seen, they still have the skin on. That's because once I cook them, the peel is going to come off really easily. So you're going to see how not good my knife is. So again, for those who are joining in, I'm simply cutting these sweet potatoes into smaller pieces so that they'll cook a little faster. And I'm putting them in a pot of boiling water, which happens to be my Instant Pot. I'm not using it as a pressure cooker. I'm just using it as a water boiler right now. That's because, as some of you know, I have a really small kitchen, It's a micro kitchen. I only have one stove top to cook things on. So I use all of my gadgets in as many ways as possible. So I'm a big advocate of using what you have. You don't have to have any special gadgets to be a good cook. So here we go. All right. So those sweet potatoes are also in the Instant Pot right now. Again, I did not peel them because once they get soft, the peels will slide right off. I did wash them, however, and we're going to put a lid on that one. For both of those, the potatoes are in a strainer pot. It's basically like a bowl, but it's made of a mesh material. I filled that up right to the very bottom of the strainer with water. You just want the steam to cook the potatoes. And the same thing with the cauliflower. The cauliflower is going to cook a lot faster, and you don't want to put too much water in there because the cauliflower absorbs a lot of water. So now we're going to get to you if you have an actual cauliflower with you. So what I'm doing with the cauliflower is I'm taking off this leafy part. All I did was I stuck my sharp knife in there and kind of took off what looks like the stem, okay? So again, I'm just gonna stick my little knife in there and kind of cut off those leaves. And I'm trying to keep all the florets intact right now. So now I'm just with my hand kind of pulling off some of those leaves so I can see where the stem is. The stem doesn't taste remarkably different from the florets, and you can definitely use some of the stem in your mash. So don't worry too much about getting it all off, but I'm just gonna keep cutting. Okay, so now you can kind of see it's kind of like a little star, and we're going to go ahead and start taking off the florets. The floret is the flower of the cauliflower, and that's what we're going to make our cauliflower mash out of. And this particular recipe is kind of a savory recipe, which means it's not sweet, so it's kind of a dupe or a kind of a substitute for mashed potatoes. So the cool thing about cauliflower is I know a lot of people are really interested in eating low carb. Cauliflower is much lower carb than potato. Even if you're not eating low carb, a lot of people don't realize that regular white potatoes kind of make them sleepy. So this should make you much less sleepy than if you were eating regular mashed potatoes. And my husband loves it because he says no one would ever know that you're eating cauliflower. They would just think that you're eating regular potatoes. So my husband doesn't eat potatoes. So white potatoes, because they flare up his autoimmune system, so we don't use white potatoes at our house. That's why I'm showing you two alternative methods that aren't mashed potatoes that you can use at your feast if you just want to kind of up the ante, make it a little healthier. Not that white potatoes are not healthy if they're not good for you, but a lot of times when we make our holiday feasts, they're kind of loaded down with ingredients that you save for special occasions, and that's why we feel kind of groggy and full after our holiday feasts. So I'm just trying to help you bring something that is dairy-free, it has no flour in it, no wheat, and you can bring it and you don't have to tell anyone that it's special or weird or healthy, and just let them eat it. I didn't narrate too much about what I was doing here, but I just cut the cauliflower into florets, and you can see I just cut them at the little stem, and they come apart into smaller pieces. So it doesn't matter too much how small they are, but the smaller they are, the quicker they're going to cook. So if you have a whole cauliflower, this is how you can cut your cauliflower. I just put already cut cauliflower into the pot behind me, so I'm not going to add more to this. I'm going to just put this in a bowl and put it aside. But I wanted to show you that it's perfectly okay to cut a regular cauliflower. It's cheaper, and so I got a regular cauliflower, and I'd say a medium-sized cauliflower, and this is how much came out of it. We can weigh it really quick if you want to compare how much you would get in a cauliflower versus in that bag. Turn this down because I hear it bubbling over. So this cauliflower had a little over a pound of florets. So that should help. Now you know. I hear my cauliflower. It sounds like it's getting ready. Now I'm going to tell you how to know if your cauliflower is ready. Here I have my cauliflower. You can see it steaming maybe, I don't know. And your cauliflower will be ready for mashing when you can put a fork through it really easily. This might need a minute. I'm going to put this in for 1 more minute. That's it. If possible, if you're going for health benefits, you want to eat that cauliflower as hard, as al dente as you can manage, as you like it, as you can tolerate it, because the softer it is, the more of those vitamins and minerals are going to have leached out into the water that you're about to get rid of. I missed my opportunity to put my garlic in at the beginning, so I'm going to go ahead and just add my garlic right now as I'm mashing my cauliflower. So I'm just going to show you really quick how to cut garlic. So garlic comes in a head like this, and you can take them apart into little pieces. So each of these is called a clove of garlic. So each of the cloves of garlic has skin on it, and the way that we get the skin off is you take your garlic and you take the flat part of your knife and you're going to smash it like that. Okay? And you'll see that the skin just separates from the flesh of the garlic and makes it really easy to take the skin off. That's how you smash garlic. So if you don't like garlic too much, or you don't like the strong flavor, you can just put a couple of peeled garlic in with your boiling water and your cauliflower. If you like it strong, you can just put it raw into your mashed potatoes, which honestly has more health benefits. Raw garlic is really good for you. It helps fight a lot of diseases. It strengthens your autoimmune system. So I'm just using a garlic press. It just helps make your garlic smaller when you put it into your food. You don't need a garlic press. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and show you briefly how to not use a garlic press. So I have a peeled piece of garlic. I'm just going to slice it into little fine pieces using a slow knife and hopefully good cutting skills, keeping my fingers out of the way. Now I'm just kind of doing like a pivot cut here. These are really big pieces, but if you just keep going and chopping it in a pivot, you should be able to get your garlic pretty fine. Just go slow, take your time. My cauliflower should be about done. I'm actually not going to add more because I already added 2 cloves of garlic, so I'm just going to put this aside. But I just wanted to show you don't need a fancy garlic press to cut your garlic. You don't need a fancy anything to be a good cook. You don't even need a real kitchen, you just need a tabletop. I'm gonna drain my cauliflower. Your cauliflower, you really wanna make sure you drain it, otherwise your mash is gonna be pretty soggy, so you wanna drain it well. Sorry, you can't see what I'm doing. I'm basically just draining it in a strainer like this, so you'll see the water come out. You really want to drain it, otherwise your cauliflower is going to be watery, and you're going to be like, ugh, this tastes like water, it doesn't taste good, it doesn't taste like mashed potatoes. So really let it drain. Don't take my word for it. Take my word for it. Let it drain a little bit, because all of the little crevices really pick up a lot of water. Okay, so we're letting that cauliflower drain a little bit so that I don't regret mashing it in a hurry. And we're going to check on these potatoes. Those potatoes are going to be the kicker. Those take a little bit more time. Here, I'm just going to put these back into the pot. I don't always put stuff back into the pot. I like using a lot of silverware and bowls and cups and gadgets, but you can make this in one pot. You don't need to make it in a bunch of different bowls. So we're just going to put this right back into the pot where it came from. Now, if I wanted to, I could easily mash this with a fork. It's super mashable. It's soft enough to do that, okay? So don't think that you need a special thing to mash your mashed cauliflower. You can use a fork. You have a fork at home, so you should be able to easily do it like that. I put my garlic in a different bowl, and then I went ahead and said that I was gonna do it all in one pot. So here we go. I'm gonna put this garlic in here. So I put my garlic in, and personally, I'm going to use an immersion blender. This is a cool gadget because it allows you to make soups in the pot or mashed vegetables in the same pot that you cooked it in. See, I didn't drain this enough and there's too much water. So I told myself not to do this and then I did it anyway. So don't be like me. An immersion blender is not a necessary tool, but I really love my immersion blender. I really love using it in the kitchen. It actually allows me to use less dishes because I can just put my sorry, I can't blend and talk at the same time. I can put my immersion blender in the same pot that I made my food in, I cooked my food in, and make it into a mash or make it into soup. For a long time, I used a $20 immersion blender, Cuisinart. It worked perfectly well, it worked fine. I recommend it. You don't need a fancy blender to be a good cook, okay? So if you don't have an immersion blender, let your cauliflower cool off and then do what I'm doing in a regular blender. So just transfer everything into a regular blender. So I'm gonna take a few seconds to blend. Now because the cauliflower was holding so much water, I haven't added any liquid to it right now, and it's like in a puree. Oh. It's already pureed, so that's pretty good. But we're gonna make it a little bit creamier by adding coconut milk. Now in my prepare for this cook along video, I told you to put your coconut milk in the fridge. It's okay if you didn't, but I just wanted to try this experiment on camera. It's telling me that my potatoes are done. Okay, I don't know if they are or not. We're gonna get to those. Okay, so I put my coconut milk in the fridge for a while, and I was hoping to separate the cream from the coconut water. So coconuts naturally separate, the stuff inside coconuts naturally separates because there's a lot of fat in coconut milk, in the stuff inside the coconut. Did it work? It worked good enough, well enough. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you how much of this cream I'm using. So the benefit of using cream in your cauliflower is that it's probably gonna be waterier than your potatoes because all of those little crevices fill up with water, and even if you drain it, it's still gonna be pretty wet. I'm looking for the creamy part. Nah, this didn't separate all that well, but I'm looking for the thicker part of this coconut milk so that when I add this liquid, it's making it creamier and not waterier. So I can see that is sort of separated. In my recipe PDF, I told you all to use half a cup of cream. Right here I have about half a cup. I'm looking at it in my Pyrex, so I'm gonna go ahead and add half a cup. If you want, you can just buy this coconut cream by itself already as a cream. And so this is gonna be much thicker than regular coconut milk. For the other sweet potatoes, I am going to use just regular milk because they don't absorb as much water and they're going to be a lot thicker. So there's more leeway to make it watery by just adding regular coconut milk. So the cool thing about this recipe is that it's going to be high in fat, and the kind of fat that you find in coconut milk, which is a healthy fat. And so these mashed cauliflower should fill you up and leave you full. So you shouldn't eat it and then realize that you're hungry like an hour later. I'm just blending it a little more to incorporate the coconut cream, and I'm getting coconut cream all over my eyes. So this is what this looks like. Remember, I haven't added any salt yet. This is just coconut cream and cauliflower. Okay? Now I'm going to add salt. So depending on the type of salt that you have, you're going to add more or less. This is really fine grained salt, so I'm going to add less. I literally just took a pinch of salt. And I'm going to start with that, 2 pinches of salt. And I'm going to see if I like the way that tastes, okay? Different people like things different amounts of salty. The smaller your granules of salt are, the less you're going to want to start with to make sure that you don't over salt your food. Now I'm going to taste it because how else am I going to know if there's enough salt? Needs more salt. Okay, I'm putting another pinch of salt. And you know what it needs? Oil. I am putting 1 tablespoon of avocado oil. This recipe would taste amazing with ghee. Ghee is clarified butter. It is mostly dairy-free, so most people who have dairy sensitivities can tolerate ghee. If you can tolerate it and you love that buttery taste, this is a really good recipe to add ghee. I don't tolerate ghee, so we're not going to add it. We are going to blend it up a little more. So we've added the cauliflower, we've added the garlic, we've added the coconut milk. I'm actually going to add this garlic because I tasted it and it's not that strong, and I really like garlic. Okay. And the last thing is pepper to taste. So salt and pepper will be the taste, however you like that. So, that is not the button I meant to press. I like my cauliflower a little bit thicker, usually. So if you like your mash thicker, you're going to add less liquid than half a cup. If you like it runny, then start with half a cup and see how it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how this turned out. It's a little runnier than I prefer, but the interesting thing is that if you let it sit in the refrigerator, or if you let it, sit on the table for a little bit, it will thicken up a little bit because the water will evaporate. So here's your mashed cauliflower. And if you have like a secret family mashed potato recipe that adds a certain spice or whatever, add that. Try it out. Experiment with your food. So here you go. That's what we made today, mashed cauliflower. So we're going to put that aside. That one's ready to eat. So that took 29 minutes of me going slow and also talking. Next, we're going to work on our sweet potatoes. And I'm going to test it with a fork. And if the fork goes through the flesh of the sweet potato really easily, then they're ready. Oh, these are super ready. Okay, just be careful with the hot steam. I'm going to regret this. Okay. This is the point where you would peel them, or take the skin off. These are really hot, and I did not let them cool off.
I'm probably going to burn my fingers, but you should be able to see that the skins come off all by themselves. Like literally this just like slid off the potato. That's how you know they're definitely ready to mash, okay? So that's why I don't really spend time peeling them, is because once they're cooked, it's really easy to get the skin off. Now if you're really brave and you're going for a nutrient density, you can mash it with the skins on. There's nothing in the skins that's going to kill you. In fact, it's just going to make you stronger and healthier. So we're going to do a quick cleanup of my workspace. Okay, next, we're going to go at these potatoes. My little dog loves sweet potato skins, so I like to give them to her as a little treat.
So you see the skins just literally pop off of these potatoes. They're really hot. That's the thing you have to be careful with. The sweet potatoes and potatoes of all sorts really hold the heat because of their density. So make sure, if you're not in a hurry like me, that you let them cool before you start handling them, because I don't want you to burn yourself because you saw Alex touching burning hot sweet potatoes, okay? Clearly, I'm not one to take the skins off sweet potatoes and talk at the same time here. We're almost done here taking the skins off of the sweet potatoes. I'm also getting a facial as we do this. That steam is like coming up right to my face. Okay. Just a few more. Yes. Okay, last one. So hot. Okay. So these I did transfer into a bowl because I was making them in the Instant Pot and that pot doesn't have a handle to be able to move around the bowl. So again, these are soft to the touch. The peel just came right off. You can put a fork straight through them. You can also mash them with a fork very easily. You don't need anything fancy here in this kitchen to make these mashed sweet potatoes. Easy. Okay? So go ahead and with these sweet potatoes, I think I put twice as much when I made these, but start with half a cup of your coconut milk. This one I really would use coconut milk. I wouldn't use the cream, but if you want to use the cream, you can. So I have half a cup of coconut milk, I'm putting it in, and I'm just incorporating it. I'm using my fork for now to show you that you don't need any special gadgets to be able to do this. Now, you should have more coconut milk in your can, even if you do both of these. I still have about half a can left over, so that means that you have a little bit of leeway with how creamy you want this to be, okay? If you don't like it, if you like your smashed sweet potatoes to be thick, don't add much of this coconut milk. If you like them to be a little more runny, then go ahead and add more. Keep in mind that as it cools off, it will thicken up a tiny bit. And then, especially the sweet potatoes, when you put them in the refrigerator, they will thicken up a lot more, okay? But then when you reheat them, whether you reheat them on the stovetop or in the microwave, just add a little bit more cream when you're reheating them and they'll get back to their original consistency. Oop. Okay, so even if you do miss a skin, it should be easy to find it once you start mashing your sweet potatoes. Okay, so go ahead and incorporate that until you have a mash. And now this recipe is kind of a more sweet recipe, and I kind of modeled it after closer to what you would serve like a pie or a dessert. And a lot of people make their sweet potato mash and it's got lots of added sugars. It has caramelized XYZ over the top. This doesn't have any of that. We're not adding any more sugar because the sweet potatoes are already pretty sweet. We are going to add some things to bring out the savoriness of it, but you don't have to do it like this. I'll tell you an alternative set of spices that you can add if you don't want it to be like pumpkin pie like. So I'm adding cinnamon. Okay, I have a teaspoon more or less. Whoa, I'd say half a teaspoon of cinnamon. So, ooh, it already smells really good. So half a teaspoon of cinnamon. If you have a pumpkin pie spice, like if you really like Trader Joe's pumpkin pie spice, you can add that. You can add cloves. Oh, and here's your vanilla. So I'm adding, I would say half a teaspoon vanilla because vanilla is pretty strong. And then you're just going to incorporate it again. And it's going to taste almost like the way that a sweet potato pie or a pumpkin pie would taste, okay? And so I would call that like a sweet and spicy combination. Yesterday I added olive oil and I added rosemary. So you can definitely make it more Thanksgiving-y if you add rosemary. If you're adding rosemary, you can either decorate it at the end with rosemary, or you can take the edge and take the little leaves off the rosemary and sprinkle them in and incorporate the rosemary like that. So rosemary would taste good in this. Sage would taste good in this. Like, think about the spices that you would use for a turkey. You can mimic those spices to kind of bring this dish in line with the turkey that you're eating. Okay? Without even using the blender, I was able to mash these pretty well and incorporate these pretty well. So here's your mashed sweet potatoes. I'm going to show you what these look like. These will also taste really great with ghee. Butter and sweet potatoes, goes really well together, and ghee has the same flavors of butter without the milk solids that butter has. So here's your sweet potato mash, and if you're serving it like this, I would sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon over the top to kind of dress it, and then there you go. Maybe you could serve it in one of your special dishes. So, okay, that is smashed sides 2 ways we were able to make sweet potato and cauliflower mash all in 41 minutes. So that's pretty speedy to be able to make 2 sides for your family's feast that don't have any milk, they don't have any added sugars. If you wanted to dress this one up, you could add smashed walnuts or smashed pecans, or if you really want to put a special touch on it, you could put candied walnuts or candied pecans just like at the very top, just like as a little decoration. And then with these, you can decorate them also like the same with your Thanksgiving herbs, your sage, your rosemary, to kind of dress it up. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. If you have any suggestions of what you want to see me make next, or if you want to suggest another spice combo, if you've tried this out and you're like, oh, you know what would taste really good is if you added this spice and this spice together, for example. So leave all those comments down below and let me know if you made this. Join me next week. Next week, we are making this famous pear salad that my sister makes every year for Thanksgiving. So if you want to learn how to make an appetizer for your special family feast or holiday gathering, this is a good choice. So we're going to learn how to make that together. So thank you so much for joining me. I am so happy. Again, thank you for all of my viewers and all of my replay viewers. I'm so happy you guys can support me, and I hope that I have given you ideas of what you can take to your family feast that won't leave you feeling groggy or guilty or sad or all those bad feelings we associate with Thanksgiving. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.